fan of Josh Da Silva, so I like to see him on the pitch for as long as possible because I just think he's brilliant, and it's so lovely to have him back this season.
Welcome to the pre-match pint with London Pride. I'm Stu Wakefield, and joining me as always is Natalie Sawyer. And we've got a very special guest this week. You may have seen him on the first show of the season on the warm-up. Joining us today is Turkish from Arsenal Fan TV. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Thank you. You called me the special guest. I think Natalie.
No. It's better to have you here.
Very special guest. Thanks for joining me. Also, should say at this point, always drink responsibly. Turkish being very responsible and drinking a Coke today. Huge game.
What does that say about us?
I know.
Oh no.
Really bad.
I'm making you guys look bad, isn't it? It's not diet though. It's full fat Coke.
Right, tomorrow, Arsenal at the Emirates. Turkish, we spoke to you for the warm-up at the start of the season. I had a chat with Carly Osborne, and it was interesting the mood that you were in ahead of that game. I wouldn't say nervy or scared, but there was a bit of unease about the fixture, I'd say.
Yeah.
How are you feeling going into this one?
More optimistic than I was going into the first one, that's for sure. I mean, after our summer transfer, not after our window, up until the Brentford game, our window, in my opinion, was pretty poor. And bear in mind that we didn't have Ramsdale and Tomiyasu for that first Brentford game, and I look at Ramsdale and Tomiyasu, probably the two best signings of the 6 we made in the summer, albeit that all 6 have proved their worth over time. This one now, I look at our competition, Tottenham, United dropping points left, right and centre, West Ham, Wolves, yeah, putting up a fight, but the door's open for top 4. And I look at our fixtures now, put the games in hand aside against Chelsea away and Tottenham away. We've got Brentford, Wolves, Watford, Aston Villa coming up. These are the games that Arsenal need to get the 3 points in, because United and Tottenham are not. And that's surprising to me. So that's opened the door for me. That's made me more optimistic about this game and the season ahead.
And Natalie, from the Brentford point of view, again, I think we were going into that game, and this was no disrespect to Arsenal at the time, going, this was almost the best fixture we could have had that day, because it was a big club, but it was one that we fancied ourselves against because of the window you had. It was kind of you weren't there yet with your signing.
It wasn't complete.
Yeah, exactly. So going into this one, I think from my point of view, watching Arsenal since, I've been really impressed with them. How are you feeling going into this fixture?
Yeah, I'm a little apprehensive about it, just because of what you've just outlined. You've still got a shot at the Champions League places, so that adds extra positivity, extra sort of influence for Arsenal to go into this game to win it. Not that you need extra influences to win a game, but there is that's why I'm slightly hesitant about it. Now, that first game of the season was absolutely incredible, and there were so many things that you just felt it was going to carry Brentford through. The momentum that we had, you'd had a bad season the season before, it wasn't great. And yeah, you've completely turned it around. And the signing of Aaron Ramsdale, I think, has just been absolutely magnificent, and somebody who I didn't actually expect to have the season he's having. So to get past him from a Brentford perspective will be fabulous.
Yeah. And looking back to that day, when you look at the team that was out that day and the performance, how different is it to the one that you've seen? Maybe, I know in 2022 you maybe not had the results, but in recent weeks and since then.
Oh, we went into that with a few COVID cases as well. Chambers played. Chambers is no longer part of us. Mari played. Mari's not here at the moment. Lokonga played. Lokonga doesn't start for us. Leno played. So the list does go on. There's a few more names in and around. Balogun started up top, which was a shock to him, to us all, and it just didn't click. It didn't work. It was very much sprung upon us. Now we've got a first 11, and most Arsenal fans can pretty much tell you what the lineup's going to be tomorrow, even with Martinelli's suspension. And we all expect Emile Smith-Rowe to kind of slot in there, because that's just what it is. We've got a thin squad, and we've got a starting 11 that we can believe in. It's just the depth that's a problem. So hopefully we can stop getting red cards.
Yeah, that's your biggest problem.
So looking at that, you're saying most Arsenal fans can name the lineup. Again, when I've watched Arsenal, there's been a few different systems, and I'll be honest, I don't really know what it is, if it's a 4-1-4-1 or it's a 4-2-3-1.
Yeah.
What do you think you will go with tomorrow, or lineup-wise?
4-2-3-1.
Yeah.
Xhaka and Partey are available, so that just picks itself in the middle. I mean, we did bring in Lokonga, but he's still very young, very raw. So we've got to rely upon the experience of those two. So if those two are fit, they play the majority of the game. So we're going to go with a 4-2-3-1.
Yeah. And Natalie, we've spoken as Brentford fans a few times about these away games against big clubs, Liverpool, Man City, and we kind of said they're free hits. I don't know about you, does this one feel a little bit different to maybe not quite a free hit? And that's no slur on Arsenal here, by the way, whatsoever. But I think having won that game at the start of the season, and because you're maybe in years gone by when I've watched Arsenal, the Invincibles, and that's the era that I grew up in, I've maybe had Arsenal in a regard up here. Is this actually an opportunity where we can go into a game tomorrow, a London derby, with a bit more hope going into this one?
Well, I mean, you look at our recent form, you probably would suggest not necessarily, but it is a London derby. You can say form goes out the window. It's definitely a game we're going to be up for. I'm sure about that. You know, you can add in some of the players that are making their way into the team now who might have a point to prove. Josh Da Silva, for example, if he starts or if he comes on, you know, being a former Arsenal player, he might want to prove something. Not that he left under unusual circumstances; it was his choice. But you always want to prove something against your former club. So, I also think the couple of results that we had recently, the draw against Crystal Palace, massive confidence boost for us. I even think the performance against Manchester City wasn't a bad performance. You know, it was 2 mistakes that cost us ultimately. You know, you get those mistakes out of the game and it might have been a different match against Manchester City. So I think we can go into it with some confidence against an Arsenal team that have at times really clicked this season and have really transformed since the beginning of the season, but have only won once in 2022. So there's no reason why we can't go there and just think we could upset the odds once again.
Yeah, and looking at that Palace game in particular last week, what were the positives for you that day?
Oh, the clean sheet, without a doubt. Let's not forget that was a Palace side that do have potent attackers. You know, we did sort of keep Wilfried Zaha pretty quiet, I thought, in the game. You know, there's some really really good threat in that Palace side, and I felt like we really cancelled them out, as much as they cancelled us out as well. So I think that clean sheet is a huge bonus for us, and I think it just gives the players a lift, gives the defence a lift as well, knowing that, look, we've shut out someone like Wilfried Zaha, who we know on his day can score goals for fun. Now we've just got to take that into the Arsenal game as well. And I also think they'll think the same of the Manchester City game. As I say, it was 2 mistakes, but ultimately we still played really well defensively.
Yeah, exactly. And look, one team that did get a clean sheet recently at the Emirates, a team that are below us at the moment, Burnley, and what did they do well on that day to come out of there with a clean sheet and a point?
Low block. That's what it is. It's been Arsenal's kryptonite for the last few years. If teams set up with a low defence and they ask us to take the game to them, that's where we tend to struggle. We tend to do better against teams that think there's an opportunity, think there's a chance, and try and take the game to us, and we're better off picking spaces. So that's a worry for us, because obviously Brentford are at the lower end of the table, and as you said, you know, your next few games are big ones at that end. So will you be coming in to the Emirates trying to shut up shop? You mentioned the clean sheet and how important that has been to you the last time out, and that's our worry. That's my worry. I hope Brentford do, you know, sniff an opportunity, because that will bode better for us. But at the same time, that doesn't necessarily mean that we'll come out with the win if you do. It's been very... Look, last game out, Arsenal beat Wolves away from home, 1-0, 10 men. Great, solid defensive performance with 10 men. But the game before that, it was 0-0 with Burnley at home. And all this calendar year, like you mentioned, Natalie, we've only scored 2 goals this calendar year. We started the year similar to what you mentioned about Man City. We was winning 1-0, a couple of mistakes, a penalty and a red card. It cost us and we lose the game. But then you head into Nottingham Forest, 1-0. We get knocked out the FA Cup, one of the poorest performances I've seen, not only this season, but over the last few years. And that's saying something when we finished 8th twice. And then, you know, we followed that up with a 0-0 at Anfield in the first leg of the Carabao Cup with 10 men. And you think, oh, you know what, we're back to what we thought we was in that Man City game. And then the second leg comes. And all that fight from the first leg is taken out of us. We lose it 2-0 at home. It doesn't look so great anymore. Burnley follows that, not so great. But then Wolves happens, and the mood changes. Along, like I mentioned before, Tottenham, United dropping points. That's put us in a much better mood than Arsenal's performances at the moment. It's the performances and level of the teams around us that has given us the optimism.
And what's it like in the Emirates in those games, Burnley 0-0, when it's teetering into 60, 70 and maybe, like you say, they're in that low block and a couple of passes are maybe going astray? What's the atmosphere like in those games?
Not as toxic as it has been.
Right.
Reason being, we've got a young squad out there, so it's a balance. You know, we're not happy well, I'll speak for myself. I'm not happy at the moment, and a lot of us are not happy because of the ownership and the way the club has declined over the years. But we have got a young squad. I look at the 11 out there, and I'm connected to about 8, 9 of those players. I like 8, 9 of those players. If you asked me who do I like 2 years ago, I would have struggled to pick 2. So that difference there allows for the crowd to really get behind. No one wants to be 0-0 at home to Burnley coming into 70 minutes, because you get the feeling of it's another one of those days. We're not going to be able to break them down. But credit to the the home fans in particular. We've kept up the energy, we've kept up the hope, we've kept up the fight, and this year in particular has been one of the better years for the Emirates Stadium, the atmosphere and the support, than it has been over the last 3-4 for sure.
Yeah. And looking at this game, and first game against us, I felt we were very physical, we were very industrial, but we also played some lovely stuff as well. How would you approach this game then, Natalie?
Listen, we were physical in that first game. You're absolutely right. Ivan Toney, I think, bullied Ben White, and we know that Ben White has now grown into his role at Arsenal, so he'll be a very different defender, I'm sure. But if you've got someone like an Ivan Toney in your team who can be that physical prowess in the box, that's only going to benefit us, because there are a lot of players that don't like that sort of physical fight. They don't like to be bullied. They don't like to lose the ball to players as easily as they did in that first game. So I would expect us to still have a physical element to our game if Ivan Toney plays, for example. Obviously I'd love to see us play nice football on the carpet as such, but we're not playing like that at the moment. That's understandable, because we're trying to grind out results in any way that we can. So it might not be pretty at some of the times, but that's what we have to do if we want to stay in this league at this moment in time, I think.
And Natalie mentioned Ben White there. And in that first game, like we say, he did look bully, but it was his first game in an Arsenal shirt. There was a lot going on that day. Alongside Gabriel, he looks like a different player.
He does, yeah.
And again, if you were looking at that match, you maybe go, right, tomorrow, that's an area we can look at. Is that actually where Arsenal have got this rock-solid foundation now?
Rock solid probably is premature,
right,
but they've definitely grown together.
Yeah.
Ben White started with Mari against Brentford, and I just think their qualities are quite similar in a sense, whereas Gabriel has the qualities that Ben White doesn't, and Ben White has the qualities that Gabriel doesn't, and that's why they work so well together. I'm hesitant to say rock solid yet, because there's still more growing and more developing to do. I remember when we signed Mustafi 5 years ago, and in the first 6 months or so, he looked like a great defender. But we all know how that ended. We couldn't even get rid of him for a fee. So that story told itself. With Ben White, he come in as the star signing in the summer, 50 million, the big signing, into an area that we've known for years we need to address. So all eyes were pretty much on him. But as I mentioned, the COVID cases, the first teamers that in reality were, didn't have a future at Arsenal, started that game. It just didn't end well overall. But the moments with Toney and Ben White really stick out, because that's your new 50 million signing, and he didn't do well against a side that's newly promoted and a striker that is playing his first game in the league. So at that moment in time, we was very much nervy about it. But at the same time, you've seen what's happened since, and since we've had more of a squad and starting 11 in place, Ben White has been key to a lot of the clean sheets we've had. I know Ramsdale takes the majority of the credit, but Ben White and Gabriel in particular, they've really stepped it up, and they've given us fans something to be optimistic about, something to cheer about in the crowd, something to believe in. Arsenal in the past used to crumble. A red card or a goal conceded, we've crumbled in the past. This time around, this season, it does seem different. We've had poor performances, we've had poor results, but we've turned the corner every single time so far. The first 3 losses of the season, going into the first international break, we conceded 9, we didn't score a goal. And then you look at Man United, Liverpool and Everton away, which were back-to-back losses. We've turned the corner on both of them. So hopefully now, there's no more corners to turn. Let's just head straight down the road.
Didn't like hearing that, to be honest. But look, joking aside, where are your strengths and your weaknesses?
Strengths, I think defensively has been a strength this season. Aaron Ramsdale in particular has been key. Tomiyasu, Ben White, great signings. Gabriel, his second year, has picked up in his role, and Tierney is Tierney. And when you have Tavares coming in as a backup, who's played well in Tierney's absence, that has been the foundations for our success so far this season. And I say success loosely because we're out of 2 cups, and I don't see this season as a success unless we get top 4. But at the moment, I'd say defensively, our organisation and structure is the key. Our weakness is finishing and creating chances, or creating and finishing chances. That's been our weakness. Failed to address it last summer, failed to address it in January, losing Aubameyang, who, albeit out of form, he was one attacker over the last 4 or 5 years that has really stood out. So we're going through a transition in the attack right now, so we'll have to rely upon defence, organisation, structure, and similar to what you said about performances are not necessarily the most important thing at the moment, it's results. Similar feeling over here at Arsenal, just get the results now.
Yeah. And Natalie, then, with that, we kind of heard there about maybe up front, prolificity might be a bit of an issue. Looking at our selection tomorrow, we've seen Josh play 90 minutes on Monday, score a hat-trick. Last week we sat here and we were discussing about whether it was the right time to start him. Reece was like, I'd start him.
Yeah.
You were cautious. Thomas listened to yourself, not Reece, obviously. Tomorrow, though, how come he's now played 90 minutes, would you be going, actually, we could start him against his old club?
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Those 3 goals will do him the world of good, and in a way there's a part of me that now is going on the Reece's side saying maybe it is a chance to start him, but then equally you sort of think, look at the impact he made when he came on against Palace. He did change the game. We had more drive and more direction going forward, so I'm sort of on the fence about whether he should start or not, because I know, you know, you can start a game and he can do all that when he starts the game, but there's something about being a game changer, and that's what he was against Palace. And I worry about, do we have anyone else that can do that if we need someone to come on and change a game? That being said, I'm a massive fan of Josh Da Silva, so I like to see him on the pitch for as long as possible because I just think he's brilliant, and it's so lovely to have him back this season. So I will leave it in Thomas's hands because he knows what's best. But either way, I think, you know, if he starts or if he comes on, he's going to have an impact because he's that sort of player.
And do you think there's any... Look, against Man City when he came on, he played up front for a bit until Wissa came on. We know when he was at Arsenal he started as a striker. Is there any shout there if... Because with Ivan and Brian, you've got them, Wissa can play up there as well. But Marcus Forsyth alone, is there any scope to maybe try him up front at some point?
Oh, there's no reason why you can't try it in games and stuff like that, you know, that in-game management. I don't have a problem with that at all. I also think, actually, as much as Ivan Toney, we love him, it's also great to have that competition because really it's Ivan Toney up front for Brentford, and if he doesn't play, we're kind of a little bit lost. I know Brian does play in that role, but we don't necessarily have that, let's say, that physical threat, which I actually think Josh Da Silva can bring if he plays up front as well. So, I mean, I love the role that he normally plays in midfield, but you know, you've said it, he started his career as a forward as such, so he knows how to do it. He's scored 3 goals in midweek. He'd relish the opportunity, I'm absolutely sure of it.
And you're talking about, Josh, you said coming off the bench, a bit of spark. Obviously on Monday, Christian Eriksen played an hour. Judging by the fact that you're suggesting you're maybe not sure Josh should start yet, I imagine you think it's too soon for Christian Eriksen as well.
Yeah, I think so, but that's only because I'm being cautious maybe, and you know, Thomas and everyone at the training ground will see him week, you know, day in, day out. They'll know exactly where he's at in his sort of management of getting back into playing first team football. I'm not sure it's ready. I have this romantic side of, if he's going to make his debut, I want it to be at Brentford. You know, we saw that reception he received prior to the Crystal Palace game. It was wonderful, and I just think it would be just so nice for him to come on in an Arsenal game, in a Brentford game at home, not in an Arsenal game, in a home game, I should say. Yeah. But that's maybe just me being romantic. And as we said before, you've got to win however you can. So if everyone believes he's ready, if you start him or you bring him on against Arsenal, then so be it. He'll be ready. On
that, obviously, it's such an amazing story, the Christian Eriksen thing. If it was to be against Arsenal, he's obviously had he's probably a bit of a Spurs legend. Do you see what I mean? So, yeah. What response would he?
They don't win much, so yeah.
He'd get a good response, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think, you know, obviously playing for Spurs, you know, the rivalry between Arsenal and Spurs goes real deep. So at the time, you can't really give any Spurs players any credit. But looking back now, you know, Eriksen's name was mentioned with Mesut Ozil, with David Silva, superstars, and he was never that superstar figure, but he was putting up numbers similar to these superstar players. He was always in and around productivity, assists, creating chances and whatnot. So he was definitely a big asset for Tottenham, and when he finally moved, I enjoyed that because I knew how important what he brings is to them, and I think he's part of the reason why Tottenham are the way they are now as well. You know, chopping and changing, losing a key asset like that, you know, it doesn't help a team that don't really have much ambition to go out and buy the best players in the world. So when
these little digs he's getting in there.
It's facts, it's facts. We don't have the ambition to buy the best players in the world either, but at least you have the history that can back it up.
Yeah. So you think if he was to come on, you'd see full sides of the stadium?
Honestly, I think he'll get a good reception from the home crowd at the Emirates as well, because there's bigger things to life than football. Yeah. Much bigger things, and that is one of them. Health is definitely a much bigger thing than any rivalry, any football game, anything like that. So I'd hope, and I do think that he will receive, if he was to come on, a round of applause and a great, not send-off, but a great reception. Yeah. But after that, it might turn to boos, considering his history with Tottenham. It might do, but it is what it is. It gets like that.
What do you guys think? Do you think it's too soon for Christian Eriksen to start? Is it too soon for Josh Dasilva to start? Let us know in the comments below. Right, I think that is unfortunately time for us today, guys. But before we go, because we've never had both sides, I'm gonna do this, and you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do score predictions. How do we think tomorrow is gonna go? I'm gonna start with yourself, Turkish.
So this week I've predicted wins all round. Earlier in the week I was saying 2-1, but as the week has gone further, I'm saying 2-0.
Yeah.
Reason being, I tend to by default say Arsenal will concede one because of the years gone past and our defence crumbling. But what I've got to get my head around is our defence has been a lot better this season, a lot of clean sheets, and I think at home to Brentford it should be another one. So 2-0.
Oh goodness. Obviously I'd love us to win. I feel a draw could be on the cards, a score draw at that. 2-2 would be great, and I actually think if you can get a 2-2 draw, what confidence that'll give to the team, because as much as we're conceding 2 goals in that, to get a point off Arsenal at Arsenal would carry us through to get against Newcastle, against Norwich, against Burnley, those 3 games to come. And I think if you can get anything from this game against Arsenal, it's going to be massive, and it could be the point that keeps us up.
Amazing, wasn't it? Natalie's going for the draw, Turkish going for an Arsenal win. I'm going to sit on the fence. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to say we're going to nick it 1-0. Sorry, everyone. Let us know what you think. And again, let us know what you think. Is it too soon for Christian Eriksen? Too soon for Josh Dasilva? Tell us in the comments below, and anything else you want to talk about, the talking points from the game. Thanks for joining me, both of you. And have a good weekend, everyone.
I like my Coke.
You Reds.